I pulled up the gravel driveway of my lake house, windows down, crisp air rushing in. Golden leaves rustled in the trees, and the afternoon sun shimmered off the water in that peaceful, magical way it always did. I hadn't told anyone I was coming up this weekend. I needed the break, no emails, no meetings, just me, the lake, and silence. But as I stepped out of my car, something felt off. The porch lights were on, music, something light and acoustic, drifted faintly through the open living room window. And there were 2 cars parked in front. Neither of them was mine. Frowning, I walked up the porch stairs slowly, heart thudding harder with each step. My key met resistance in the door, like someone had recently locked it from the inside. I jiggled it harder and finally pushed through. What I saw stopped me cold. My sister Emily stood in the center of my living room, barefoot, cradling a mug in one hand and her belly with the other. 7 months pregnant, a white knit blanket. My blanket was thrown over the couch she leaned against. The baby stroller beside her was unfolded, as if she were already living here. "Oh," she said, "why, died?" "Ava, you're early." "Early for what?" I said slowly. My voice came out sharper than I expected. "What are you doing here?" Before she could answer, a familiar voice came from the hallway. I found those throw pillows you liked. We can." My mother stopped mid-step, her face lighting up. "Ava, you made it." She brushed her hands together like she'd just completed a chore and stepped forward to kiss my cheek. I didn't move. Behind her, my father appeared, carrying a small toolbox. "What the hell is going on?" "Someone explain," I said, my jaw clenched. "Right now." Emily looked at me like I was the intruder. "Mom and Dad brought me up here to see the place. We figured now was as good a time as any to start planning the nursery." "What nursery?" My voice cracked, disbelieving. Dad chuckled like I'd said something silly. "We told Emily she could stay here after the baby's born. You know, just until she gets back on her feet. This house has everything she needs, quiet, space, and it's safer than her apartment." My ears were ringing. Mom chimed in, "Don't worry, sweetheart. We'll help maintain everything. It's still your house technically. We just assumed you'd want to help your sister during such a special time." "You assumed I'd give her my house. Well," Emily trailed off, eyes darting around. "You don't live here full-time, Ava. I thought it would be okay. You always say family comes first. And you promised this to her." I turned to my parents. My voice was shaking now, without asking me. Mom crossed her arms, defensive. "We raised you, Ava. You wouldn't be where you are without us. A few months is nothing compared to that. Besides, it's not like you're hurting for space. You have your place in the city, and this is perfect for Emily. Perfect for me," I said, "because I worked for it, because I bought it." Dad's face darkened. "You don't have to throw that in our faces. You're standing in my living room," I snapped. "You let yourselves in. You brought my sister here. You made promises with something that doesn't belong to you." "I'm your sister, Ava," Emily said quietly, as if that explained everything. "I'm having a baby. I thought you'd care more." I stared at her, at all of them. "You want to talk about caring? I paid for your college textbooks. I bailed you out of credit card debt twice. I covered your rent for 6 months when you and Zach broke up, and I did it because I cared, but this," I gestured around the room. My room now invaded. "This is manipulation. This is entitlement." Emily's lips trembled. "I didn't ask to be pregnant and alone." "No," I said softly, "but you also didn't ask me. You just assumed I'd hand over everything." Mom's voice cracked. "How can you be so heartless, Ava?" I turned to her slowly. "I'm not heartless. I'm exhausted." The silence that followed was heavy. They didn't get it, not really, not yet, but something had shifted. A line had been drawn. "I want you all out," I said firmly. Now, Dad opened his mouth, but I cut him off. "I don't care what you were planning. Pack up, get out." Emily stood there for a moment, like she was deciding whether to cry or lash out. She chose tears. "You said you'd always be there for me," she whispered. "And I will be," I said, "but not like this." They left that evening, after an uncomfortable hour of shuffling around and avoiding my gaze. My mother muttered something under her breath about shame. My father didn't say a word. Emily, before getting into the car, looked back at the house and then at me. "You'll regret this," she said. I didn't respond. I stood there on the porch long after their headlights disappeared, the cold starting to bite at my arms. Inside, the house was quiet again, but it wasn't peaceful. The furniture was still slightly out of place. Emily's baby blanket lay folded on the arm of the couch. She'd forgotten it in her rush to leave. I picked it up like it was evidence from a crime scene. It smelled like her perfume, sweet, floral, artificial. My phone was already buzzing when I made coffee. 10 missed calls from Mom, 4 from Dad, 3 texts from Emily, ranging from subtle guilt to veiled threats. I didn't expect this from you. Thanks for showing me your true colors. Guess money really does change people. I didn't answer, not yet. I couldn't. My thoughts were too loud to hear anyone else's. But later that afternoon, the calls began to multiply, this time from extended family. My cousin Lisa, whom I hadn't spoken to in 6 months, left a voicemail full of passive, aggressive disapproval. Hey Ava, just checking in. Heard about the Lakehouse thing. Emily's pregnant, right? I mean, if it were me, I'd have offered without being asked. But hey, we all show love differently, I guess. Right, love looked a lot like exploitation in my family. That night, I sat alone in the living room, legs curled up, staring out at the lake. I kept replaying the moment they told me, as if it were a gift, as if giving my house away was the most natural, generous thing in the world. And maybe that's what made it so sickening. It wasn't just that they expected it. It was that they never even asked. 2 days later, I got an email from my aunt. Just a short note. Sometimes the eldest forgets her role. Emily is the one who needs you now. I hope you find your heart again before the baby comes. My heart again. Where was my heart when Dad was unemployed, and I skipped meals to cover groceries? Where was my heart when Mom got sick, and I flew across the country mid-conference just to sit by her hospital bed? No one ever asked what those sacrifices cost me. No one offered to repay them. They just expected more. That weekend, I went back to the city, my real home, a small but sleek apartment in a high-rise with soundproof windows and a view of glass towers. A place that no one had the keys to but me. I sat on my couch, trying to work, but instead found myself staring at a spreadsheet with Emily's texts flashing through my mind. You're lucky you don't have to worry like I do. This baby is a blessing. I thought you'd want to be part of that. You said you loved me. I did love her. God help me, I still did. But love without boundaries is just a leash. By the end of the week, my parents stopped asking. They started demanding. Dad called again. This time his tone was clipped, professional. We've spoken to a family lawyer, he said. Not to sue or anything. Don't panic. But we wanted to know your obligations. We think there might be some support clauses that could apply, since your sister's in a vulnerable state. Obligations. I said, you mean like the ones you never had when I was the one struggling. That's not the same, Ava. You're right, I said. Because I didn't ask for a house. I asked for respect, and I never got it. The line went quiet. Then, you're not the person I thought you'd grow up to be. I smiled bitterly. I finally agree with you. The guilt wasn't always quiet. Some nights it screamed in my ear. I'd stare at the ceiling and wonder, was I really being too harsh? Was I punishing Emily for old wounds she didn't cause? Was I letting money make me cold? But every time I returned to that house, my house, I remembered the way they stood there, smiling, ready to hand over my sanctuary like it was an afterthought. They weren't just asking for help. They were demanding ownership, and then came the final straw. I received a package. No note, just a framed sonogram photo, a onesie with the words Auntie Ava's favorite, and a print-out baby registry. They were still trying to reel me back in, not with apologies, but with guilt-trapped gifts. Proof that even now they assumed I'd cave. That I'd be overcome with sentiment, forget everything, and hand over the keys. But something in me had calcified. Love didn't mean sacrificing yourself over and over. Love meant showing up honestly and drawing the line when it turned toxic. So I stopped returning calls. I stopped defending myself. I stopped explaining that boundaries weren't cruelty, they were protection. And slowly, the silence turned sweet. One evening, as I sat on the Lakehouse dock with a thermos of wine and a blanket over my lap, I realized something. This house wasn't just property. It was proof that I had built something, that I wasn't just the family helper, the fixer, the fallback plan. I was a woman who had learned how to say no, even when it hurt. And somewhere out there, I knew that hurt was turning to anger in my family's kitchen. But here it was turning to peace. Rachel, 28 years old, single mother of 2, recently fled an abusive relationship. Her caseworker, a friend from my college days, mentioned her in passing over lunch one afternoon. She's trying to rebuild from nothing. My friend said, all she wants is a place where her girls can sleep safely and wake up without fear. That night I sat on the dock again, watching the sun bleed into the lake, and realized that maybe what my family tried to steal from me, my peace, my home, I could give by choice to someone who deserved it, not because I was asked, not because I was guilted into it, but because I wanted to. While my parents and Emily whispered with lawyers and sulked in group chats, I met Rachel in person. She was nervous, soft-spoken. She kept glancing at her daughters like they might disappear at any moment. Her youngest, barely 4, held her hand like a lifeline. I don't want charity, she said, looking me dead in the eye. I just want a chance, and that was all I needed to hear. We drafted the lease the next day, a full year. Rent-free, utilities covered, maintenance on me, the only condition, make this place your home, not a stepping stone, a sanctuary. Meanwhile, the pressure from my family grew bolder. My dad sent me an email titled Final Request. It read like an ultimatum. If you can't find it in your heart to do this for Emily, then I don't know who you've become. This family is about loyalty. My mother followed up with, you used to be so warm, so generous. What happened to you, Ava? And Emily. A text, one line, when the baby's born, don't expect to be part of his life. I stared at the screen. My hands didn't even shake anymore. They didn't know it yet, but the door had already closed, and I was about to lock it behind them. I invited them to the lake house one last time. The message was short. Dinner, Saturday night, bring everyone. Let's end this properly. They came, of course. Even Aunt Lorraine showed up in pearls and false concern. They entered the house like it still might be theirs, like I was finally coming to my senses. The table was set, wine glasses shimmered under the soft lights, candles flickered against the walls. And on the table, next to each place setting, was a white envelope. No one touched theirs yet. I poured the wine myself. Waited until everyone had a glass, smiled, then I spoke. I've been thinking a lot lately about what family means. I began. About what love means and about what it doesn't mean. Mom shifted in her chair. Dad stared at his wine. Emily looked away. You all taught me that love means sacrifice, that love means giving without question, that being the eldest means carrying the burden silently, gratefully. I took a slow sip, then set my glass down. But here's what I've learned. I walked around the table as I spoke. Love without consent is manipulation. Love that only flows one way is servitude, and sacrifice that's expected isn't noble, it's theft. Dad bristled. Is this a speech or an ambush? Neither, I said. It's a boundary. I gestured to the envelopes. You'll find inside each one a copy of the deed to this house with my name, only mine. You'll also find a notice that the property is now under temporary lease to a woman named Rachel and her daughters. They're moving in next week. Emily's jaw dropped. You're giving my house to strangers. I turned to her, voice steady. Your house, she faltered. You know what I mean. No, I said, I don't, because at no point was this ever yours. Mom's face had gone pale. You're not serious. I've never been more serious. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't beg them to understand. I simply told them the truth. That house was my reward for surviving everything I was asked to carry. But it stopped feeling like mine the moment you all decided it was yours to give away. Don't do this, Emily whispered. Don't punish the baby. I'm not. I said. I'm protecting myself and giving what you tried to steal from me to someone who actually needs it and never expected it. Aunt Lorraine scoffed. You're making a fool of yourself. And no, I said, smiling gently. I'm finally not one. They left in a flurry of outrage and whispered insults. Emily was crying again, but not out of regret, out of disbelief that she didn't win. Mom didn't hug me goodbye. Dad didn't shake my hand, and as their cars pulled away, I exhaled. It was done. The lake house, once heavy with resentment, felt light again. I met Rachel there a few days later, helped her carry boxes, set up the bunk beds for her girls, stocked the fridge. As she stood on the dock, tears in her eyes, she turned to me and asked, "Why me?" I smiled, "Because you never asked for it." Weeks passed. The text stopped, the silence grew longer. I deleted the baby registry, blocked my aunt, muted the family group chat. I wasn't angry anymore, just free. One evening I drove up alone. Rachel and her girls were away for the weekend, visiting her sister. I had asked if I could stay one night. She said yes, of course, with gratitude in her eyes and no bitterness in her voice. I sat on the dock with a blanket over my shoulders and a mug of tea in hand. The lake shimmered under the stars. And I finally understood something. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't getting even, it's getting free.